Technologic.
Hello, this is the YEO Tech series where we delve a little deeper into our awesome front end of our business, which is the technical design department. And today we are looking at a very exciting project, which is a helical staircase that we are currently undertaking on a lovely project in Kensington. It's a part of a wider joinery package, but this is the jewel in the crown of that project. And this is currently on site, in the workshop and on site. And we are here today with Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hello.
All right, buddy. Yeah, Rob is our staircase master in-house, and he has taken the model work of this staircase from point of design conception through to it being made and going to site. So, our involvement in this is we were heavily involved in the design of this staircase. It was a collaboration with the architect who are RJH Architecture, and very much a development and a partnership with them in bringing this to where it is today. And we are managing the whole process from working with the structural steel specialist through to the handrail company, curved glass, and everything in between. This is currently on site. The structural steel work is in. The handrail has been templated. We're making the treads as we speak. So there's a lot to bring together. And Rob, I'll hand over to you now, mate. How the hell do we start? Where do we start with a project like this? It doesn't look the easiest to draw.
No, it kind of didn't follow how we'd normally approach the design of a staircase. You know, we kind of had a design brief and some kind of reference images of what the client liked and kind of the sorts of things that they wanted to try and achieve. So rather than focusing too much on the structural elements and how it integrated with site, I really focused on how to achieve, what we thought they wanted, from a design and like an aesthetic point of view, following a few basic principles with regards to a helical staircase. There still needs to be a minimum amount of space. Rise and going still need to conform to regulation. So really it was a case of starting with, kind of the basic principle of it's a helical staircase. We worked quite early on with the specialist metal workers to establish, the basic requirements they need, the section sizes of steels, the size of plates, to make sure that from the very beginning we weren't creating something that was unachievable. One of the first things we did was look at kind of the basic section that was required for the staircase. So just to roll it back, you start with this, which was kind of the section that, through discussing with the specialist metal worker and kind of the design that we were trying to achieve, this is the kind of section of the staircase that we came up with. And then you combine that with the curve, if you like, of the staircase. Although this looks quite complicated, it really is only, a basic kind of radius spread over the height that you have to work with for the staircase. And that forms this spiral, which is kind of the basis of the whole the helical staircase. And essentially all you do is you take that section and you just kind of pull it around that curve, and it gives you this form. And this went through several kind of iterations. It kind of got looked at, revised, and then what we started doing is you just start building in more and more components onto that basic form. Each time you add a bit, so you add the treads and just check that, they work, they conform to regulations. The idea was to have an equally spaced, tread, so they're all repeating and kind of just making sure in principle that worked. And then we kept on doing was adding more and more of the required components and getting it to work visually, always checking that it doesn't compromise, what the metalworkers said was required. And just getting to a point with the model where there was enough information for us to then put this in front of the client. Knowing that it kind of ticks the boxes for it's achievable, it's realistic. And then after each kind of, I think we went through 3 or 4 different kind of main reviews with the client, each time making minor adjustments, things like the curve at the top here, how that drops, how it meets underneath. These are all just small details that got kind of worked essentially to a point where everyone was happy with how it looked. And then one of the key things at a certain point in the process of reviewing the design was then making sure within the space it worked. You know, in isolation, it's very easy to kind of stand, you know, this far away, but in reality, you might not be able to do that. So that was very important, was to put it into the space it was going to occupy and making sure it didn't feel too tight. It didn't conflict with other things that were required in that area.
Yeah.
You know, it was quite tight in certain spaces, doors.
Yeah, this was key. This was key because it is quite a tight space there.
Yeah.
And the client was very keen just to see how it felt and what room they had to move around. And being able to put it in the actual space was genius, really. I don't know how you do it without it.
And then just resolving the details of how things meet ceilings and walls. And it was all just achievable through this design process. Then we kind of reached a point where everyone was satisfied with how it looked and very happy. And we were also satisfied it was achievable. Yeah.
And that's the point then. So we're at a point now where everyone's happy. The design has sort of been signed off in principle. And then we pass over to the structural team to work out how the steelwork's going to work.
Exactly that. So we gave this model to the specialist metal fabricator. They then worked in all the manufacturing detail. They broke it down into the components they would need to manufacture it. They worked out how it would be tied to all the structural components on site. They checked with, you know, structural engineers to make sure the supporting work on site was sufficient, all around the basic design model we'd done. And you can kind of see how closely the models match, because ultimately it was developed in conjunction with the specialist to make sure that, yes, at the point they received it, very little had to change, you know.
So our model was almost dead accurate in the first place, wasn't it?
Exactly that. There was very, very little that had to be changed to kind of get it to work for manufacture and for installation. And it's quite interesting seeing everything in orange is the site structure. So you can see how, you know, the specialist fabricator has considered, you know, how it interacts with that based around the design work that we'd done. And there was no need to kind of alter anything, really. It was just a case of checking and breaking it down for manufacture, which worked really well.
Nice, yeah, and that went in on site lovely. That's currently on site. It has been the metalwork that will be on show has been finished in a bronze finish, looking amazing. The glass has been fitted. The handrail now has been templated. The handrail will actually be leather clad as well, and we are currently in the process of making all the treads and risers to go up there. So, Rob, is there anything else interesting to talk about on this, or are we done?
Just a quick one. When the specialist metal fabricator was done with the, you know, their aspect, they then gave us back the 3D model, and that has allowed us to then detail, based upon what we know is being manufactured by them, the timber components that we then needed to fit to their metal staircase. And that was just a case of essentially taking their model, checking that it kind of worked, and then breaking it down in detail for how we would manufacture these components. And then ultimately placing
each tread and rise is a single component. And then can we just have a little look? There's a little, we've created a shadow gap on the internal side.
So you can see that's there.
Yeah. Yeah, nice.
And the nice thing about being a repeat pattern, the bottom two are different, and then all of the remaining treads are the same. So we can just make a repeat component. Yeah. That was always quite an important aspect of the design. Which I say we're all but done with now. Ultimately, we can do it with confidence, knowing that essentially the metal fabricator has made what they've given us, and it should all go together nicely on site.
Brill. And that's the next part of our process, is bringing it all together on site. I say we're probably halfway through now, and we will document this all the way through, and I can't wait to see this in and finish. So thanks again for dropping in and watching this technical series, and catch you on the next one. Thank you. Cheers, Rob.
Cheers.
Technologic.